Hey everyone. All right. So now what we want to begin shifting our focus on is, maybe you've kind of noticed that up until this point, we've kind of operated under an assumption that we are plain and simply talking about our firm, our organization from a standpoint of basically we offer one kind of thing, right? We operate in one industry. We talk about this in a very static sense that we are operating in under one set of conditions. Now we have expanded that a little bit in our talks about competing internationally and globally, but what about if we wanted to not just open up to other markets, but if we wanted to open ourselves up to other industries? Well, this is what we're going to focus a little bit on starting today as we discuss about this idea of diversification and diversified strategies. So first and foremost, right, what do we mean by diversification? What does it mean to be a diversified firm? Well, a diversified firm is just plain and simply, if we're a firm and we become involved in offering goods or services in multiple industries, right? We start to see how we might become a diversified firm when we're operating in at least two or more lines of business that are going to be in distinctly different industries. That's the big kicker here, is we're not a diversified firm if we're offering, let's say, multiple products within the same industry. So products that are all aimed at, let's just say, plain and simply from an entrepreneurial perspective, all our things are all aimed at solving pain points for this common market, or solving common pain point. What we mean here is, how are we when we're a diversified firm, we're operating within multiple industries that are distinctly different. Now, you can probably imagine, after some of the other, conversations that we've had so far this semester, that operating across industries is definitely going to complicate our strategy making, because basically we have to have a great understanding of things like our external environment, our industry, and what goes on there. And those things influence a whole lot about our decision making and strategy. So we definitely complicate it by, now, when we operate in multiple of these, we've got to assess multiple external environments. We have to understand how these multiple industry environments all operate, and we have to figure out a way to navigate all of them simultaneously. Understandably, because our external environments will now shift and be different, we have to develop separate business strategies, basically for every single industry we're a part of, and we have to devise some sort of firm-wide strategy that is going to make sense as a whole. Like, why would we operate in these multiple industries together? Is it even possible that we can do this in a conducive way that's good for us as an organization, not just a bunch of random pieces thrown together here, right? Because obviously, operating in certain industries, in tandem with one another, makes more sense than some others. And so we really have a lot of considerations to take account for if we're going to try to be a diversified firm. And that might even just bring you to the whole question of, okay, well, should I diversify, and then why would I diversify? Well, there's a lot of positives to all this. There's no urgency for a single business firm to diversify into other businesses if they still have ample opportunities for growth and profitability in their present industry. It's just really not that appealing, because it is a difficult process, but it is very risky for us too, for a single business firm to keep operating in just one industry when, for a multitude of reasons, might start looking like its long-term performance prospects are kind of dimming. Right? If we need to look into places to expand, diversification is really what we've got to have our eyes set on in that sense. So a single business firm is a prime candidate, we might say, for diversification if things like its present industry conditions are getting worse. They're expected to be long lasting. We have to figure some way to pivot out, or maybe we just see some opportunities to expand into an industry whose let's say, technologies or products complement our current business? How can we potentially use our skills and abilities that we have now within a different industry in order to create new value for us, especially if our situation is currently getting worse in our industry, like a dying industry, like looking at things like the movie rental businesses or different things like that and how they've just died off. Like they had to look for ways to, branch out and try to figure out how to make things work in new industries, diversify their portfolios and things. Many of them didn't have the ability to do that much, but it's just an example of like some industry with a dire outlook, right? So we can diversify in a number of ways, right? We can diversify into closely related or even totally unrelated businesses sometimes, although that does make things a lot more complicated for us. But, sometimes we can diversify by, like our present revenue and our earning base to a small or in a small extent or a major extent could be used in order to pivot into another one, right? We might use our earning base at this point and say, we're going to use all of our earnings base in order to invest in a new area because it's going to take a lot of investment. We can diversify by doing things like that, or, acquiring an existing firm, forming a new subsidiary in a new industry, all sorts of things. So we just have to look for these opportunities to expand, acquire, diversify, all of these kinds of things. But most importantly, as we're going to talk about, we're trying to create synergy. We're going to come back to this in a moment and really understand what we mean by trying to create synergy through diversification, because this should be our focus. These steps aren't necessarily the end all of most important things to focus on here, but just understanding that if we are going to try to craft a diversification strategy, well, we've got to pick that new industry. We've got to enter into it and make the decision on whether or not we're going to enter by creating a new startup, acquire an existing business, get into a joint venture, form a strategic alliance with another firm, any of these kinds of things. Well, we're going to always be looking for opportunities to leverage our cross-business value chain relationships, right? We've talked about this. These are resources of ours. We have to think of them that way, and we have to understand that whatever strategic resources or capabilities we have at our disposal, we need to look for ways that we can utilize those things effectively to give us a leg up and get into these new industries. So we choose that by then evaluating our growth and our profitability prospects. We reallocate or steer our current resources into our necessary new industries and our new business ventures and try to initiate some sort of action to boost the combined performance of our collection of businesses, because it's not just about now transferring all of our eggs into a new basket. We have to understand how we can make this conducive, because we're looking for this idea of synergy. And what we mean by that is just this better off test at the bottom of this. Now, there are a couple of considerations here where we would say we want it to pass things like the industry attractiveness test and the cost of entry test. Those both make perfect sense, right? Does the industry look good? Is it going to, be cost effective for us to get into it? If we pass those, fine. The important thing here is that better off test, right? Remember what we said, that a major motivation for diversification is that the multi-business firm, our parent company that now comprises multiple businesses by us diversifying into new industries, as a whole, it's got to be greater than the sum of its parts. And that is what we mean by synergy. Will operating together be better than operating apart? So in that sense, just supposing that firm A begins to diversify by purchasing firm B from another industry, right? Well, if A and B's consolidated future profits are no greater than what each of them would have earned operating on their own, our decision, actually, our diversification, it only produced a 1 + 1 = 2 situation. And that does not create added value for us, because A's shareholders could have achieved the exact same 1 + 1 = 2 by just purchasing stock in company B and leaving it alone and not acquiring the risks associated with it. What we're looking for is a situation where, you know, the total result of our diversification creates a 1 + 1 = 3 situation, right? We don't want a 1 + 1 = 2. We want, now that we operate together, we are distinctly better than we would have been if we just would have added together the sum of our parts. Now, this can be difficult for us to figure out ways to do this, but it is the entire impetus behind diversification is synergy. How is it we can prove operating together through this diversification will be better than if we were to operate separately?